Hi guys, Dragonic Kaiser here, and I'm here with a Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion the Blood deck. Myself, Kaiser, doing the profile. Seems somewhat appropriate. Anyway, this is my deck. I've played this for a while, used this in teams, and it's where the name for the channel came from, Kaiser. Hence as well, Kaiser on the mat too, which is quite nice. I do quite enjoy these custom mats. Anyway, I'm playing free of this guy. The skill, if you weren't already aware of it, is it counterblast free, gains 5k, attacks the whole front row with crit. So odds are your opponent's going to lose 2 rear guards at that stage, and I'd like to imagine by the time you're using the ultimate break skill they have at least 3 damage. So they're probably going to want to guard that, so that's a 20k guard or a null guard as well, which is quite nice. That's probably 25 if you had the appropriate setup anyway, but I'll go over that in a little bit. So I play 3 of these guys, of course. It's a later game ride, so what I always think with late game ride grade 3s is that you can afford to get away with just playing 3 of them. Mainly because you don't need them as your initial first ride. So like break rides or, you know, the pre-cross ride I don't know the appropriate word for it, but the base of the cross ride. It's smart to play 4 of these because this is what you want to ride first. This is like your priority to get out first, so that you can get this guy on top and have that 13k base, which is very nice for the deck. It gives it a nice little edge anyway. And cross ride decks are always pretty decent anyway. And his skill is slightly less of the ultimate break, but this is limit break, so you can use it a little bit earlier. In that you counterblast free, it gains 2k, and can attack the entire front row. So it's not bad for mid game if your opponent's got some decent rear guards you want to kill off. But a lot of the mind games that people who know this deck tend to try and do is they'll tend to put out rear guards that don't have a lot of value to them early on, and they'll either have to sack those later when they want to apply a bit of pressure, or when you attack these with any like spare attacks that maybe you have that can't quite hit the vanguard. It's like another 11k here. Swing that, and yeah, at some point they're probably going to have to replace those with the ones they want to use. So at that point, they've stalled you out enough, and yeah, it's time to punish them for it, I guess, with Vermilion Thunderbolt. So yeah, definitely can get away with the 3 and 4 ratio there. I play onto the grade 2s anyway. I play 4 of the Dusty Plasma Dragon, because this is a Vermilion deck, and there are quite a few low attacking units. They're possibly 5, 6k, so this guy, being on 12, can really help you actually hit like 17s, 18s, so even if you have got like a 6k booster at the back here, you can still hit cross rides. So it's pretty handy for helping you fix your columns too. And of course attacking on its own isn't too bad either. Next we have 4 of the Garuda. It's your basic damage and flipper for Narukami. And Vermilion is the kind of deck where you're going to get one of the 2 effects off. So you're either going to get one of the blood effects, or one of the Vermilion effects based on your situation. Obviously, not as ideal as getting the ultimate break off. But if you apply enough Garuda pressure, possibly after using one of the effects, and your opponent can still afford to take a bit of damage, they probably will, because they want to guard these attacks so that you can't keep doing these. And yeah, getting them off twice a game is really, really nice, and that'll put you up in a really nice spot in terms of advantage. So definitely recommend Garuda, really good pressure card. People are going to want to kill it early as well, so it provides that role too. Finally, if you do find yourself with a little bit of spare counterblast, not necessarily from the Garudas, but if you only choose to use one Vermilion skill, you have the very nice option of using Death Scythe. Now, definitely do not recommend using this guy as like the first time. Let's say you get this thing in hand turn 2. You've called something else to the Vanguard Circle, perhaps a Garuda, and you want to call it to the Rearguard Circle. That time of the that situation, unless they have something really, really dangerous along their back row that you can't hit with your rearguards, I really recommend not using Death Scythe. It's kind of a late game call when you want to get rid of something that's really messing you about, or if they've reached that point where they've got a 10k booster there and you just want to snipe it off, or if you've got spare counterblast, of course. But yeah, don't use these guys unless you absolutely have to, but they're nice to have as an option. Main word there being an option. Now finally the grade 1s, there's still grade 0s to go. Got 4 of the Red River Dragoons, 8k, generally helps make better columns, as we've said in like pretty much every other video that's featured in 8k, it works here, 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 and there, in the Guardian Circle, which you can't quite see. But this also provides the role of playing a Vanguard booster too. So being cross-ridden, you're on 13k base, having an 8 behind it, makes 21, always nice. and it means you don't have to play Photon Bomb or Wyvern, so you have a little bit extra space. Whereas I would say in Grade 1 ratios for Vanilla Narukami, you don't tend to have a lot of room, which is kind of sad. Anyway, another Grade 1, of course, Desert Gunner Ryan. Now, he's in here mainly for the sake of having a 7k. And obviously his effect isn't a counterblast, so Lizard Soldier Ricky is not really a good alternative. His effect is also quite circumstantial too, and especially in the current meta we have. 5 guard doesn't always make a ton of difference, but if you make quite calculated plays, and you time this guy really well, stopping your opponent by intercepting just once could possibly help you push for the game. Never know. But yeah, I would say it's a circumstantial at best card. For some reason I tend to draw it on turn 1 and have to ride it, so it's never really great for that. But it's here because I play a lot of 9s, and even if I have 11Ks like spare Vermilions on the rearguard circle, it can help make 18 columns too, which is obviously good for cross rides. 4 null guards. Don't know what else there is to say about this. Vermilion being a slightly older deck, I say older, it's set 9, which really in retrospect isn't that far ago, that long ago. But yeah, don't really need to talk about null guards too much. I'm sure every other deck profile you've ever seen people have said play 4, because it just makes sense, and it really does. If you play 3, you're going to be in one of those situations where at some point during the game, you're going to find yourself without one of them. So having 4 just means that you're likely to draw it when your opponent goes off, which is always quite nice. Even if you're on cross-ridden base, sometimes you really just need a null guard. Finally, some of the tech choices. Dragon Monk Ginkaku. Vermilion also being an ultimate break deck, people are very hesitant to put you on 5 damage. So you can basically make yourself the on 5 damage. And at the same time, say you've got something you don't want in your damage zone as well, say critical trigger, heal trigger. You can use this guy, put that back at the end of the turn if you want to. You've got an extra trigger in your deck now. Why not? Or as well, on very, very, very rare occasions, I've had a grade 3 in my damage zone and being a bit grade stuck, so I've chosen to put that guy back. So he kind of works in that sense as a tech option. You can use him early game to recycle things back in the deck that you don't necessarily want in your damage zone, or you can use him late game if your opponent doesn't want to put you on 4 or 5 damage, and then you can rack face, which is very nice. And of course I've said before, having 6Ks in the deck, a little bit of a problem, so I've put the appropriate rear guards in there to compensate. So these guys tend to work pretty well. So I'm assuming, of course, you plan your field up accordingly. And as well, this card kind of works because it's a low-cost rear guard, well, a low-attack rear guard, and you don't have to plan necessarily around it. This can be a very spontaneous card that almost makes a column on its own. And that card is, of course, Dancing Cutlass. Well, it's Rising Phoenix. But anything that has the Dancing Cutlass clone effect that doesn't have a better alternative, I am definitely in favour of playing. And Rising Phoenix is just one of those. You have a little bit of soul to spare to play with. Don't definitely recommend using 4 of your soul, because you're not going to draw both of these in one game, let's be honest. So let's say you get this turn 3, you sat on regular Vermilion, call this the rearguard circle, Soul Blast 2, maybe you get that cross ride you were looking for, maybe you get something else, maybe you just get like a spare Vermilion, you can pop that there, or even a Dusty Plasma, that's a 16, 17k column, basically for free, off just this one card. So yeah, in that sense you can use your soul, get an extra card, and it kind of gives you that little edge over decks that probably wouldn't play something like this. So that's all of the rear guards gotten through. Onto the triggers. I play 4 Yellow Gem Carbuncles, 4 Sacred Spear Eradicator Pollux, and I think you can probably see where this is going. Yeah, 12 criticals. I'd say any older deck that still needs to hold Prior Pressure today, go 12 crits, because you want to finish the game as soon as possible. You don't want people having their Break Cry Gambits, no. They're not having them, honestly. Turn 3, they're on 3 damage. I know it's a bit of a scumbag move to double crit someone in that circumstance, but as well, Vermilion occasionally having his own inherent crit, you can generally deal quite a lot of pressure just having crits. And older decks, I would definitely recommend you kind of need 12 crits, because there isn't necessarily too much of a power creep. I would argue with Break Rides and Legion, it adds somewhat of a power creep, but it's all quite manageable if you're a good player. But yeah, crits definitely help older decks keep up, and this deck is one of those ones where I've also found myself, I'm one of those people that whenever they get a draw trigger, they also kind of just wish they had a crit instead. So it suits my playstyle too. Oh, also one little thing about this guy. Yeah, he goes in the soul. He gives you more soul, so you can use this guy. Definitely don't do that. If you think about it, the exchange is 3k extra power to something, but you lose 10k guard. So the most you're ever going to pressure from your opponent is an extra 5, and you're losing 10. If you don't finish them off on that turn, it's going to hurt you in the long run, it really is. So, worst case, it's an emergency use. Just like spikes, and I believe Nova Grappler has a damage and flipper version of the spike card too. And of course, need it be said that we have 4 heals in here, because it's not completely suicidal. Though you probably could play 16 crits, I suppose. Maybe don't. Because heals still give you the option to use 2 Vermilions per game, if you're a little bit lucky. And having Garudas and these means that you probably have access to about 6 counterblast in a game, realistically, most, but not all games. So definitely don't depend on getting your heals off your own flips. So it's one of those decks where you need to plan ahead a little bit. It's quite fun, but it also seems to perform quite well, actually, surprisingly, since a lot of new gambits have come out since. Finally, of course, the starter, being Spark Kid Dragoon. The alternative is also Seishin, but I don't really feel like we're in the format where we have a lot of boosters that call back. With Extra Booster 8 and 9 coming out, we have Morganrot, so if Blau becomes in the meta alongside Link Joker, maybe possibly consider playing a Seishin, but in that case I would recommend playing an extra copy of the Blood, just to make your cross-ride a bit more reliable, because this is the main reason he's in here, making sure that cross-ride is just a bit more reliable than it already is. Him also being a 4k booster, he's not going to want to be on the field for very long, because behind the Vanguard, at most that's going to be a 17k column, which is, it's okay, it's manageable, but if called back here works somewhat well with Dusty Plasma, still circumstantial. So Seishin works better in the fact that it's just a 5k, but you're not going to get to use that a lot of games, especially seeing as the decks that are around. So this guy just allows you to accelerate your own plays and not have to think about what your opponent's playing. So less work for you, I suppose. Anyway, of course, if you like the video, drop us a like down in the section below. Also, comment would be appreciated too. Give us a bit of feedback. Subscribe if you want to see more content. Okay, and see you next time.